Okay.
All right, all right. Okay, so this is meeting number 2 for the book Man's Search for Himself, because I felt like there was more stuff that I wanted to discuss with you about it. Some passages that specifically stuck out to me and some of the thoughts I had. Like we said before, this was a book you read in like 2 weeks. It took me 4 months. So I got a lot of things to talk about.
Okay.
I done went through and struggled through this book. We're gonna work this out together.
All righty, let's do it. This is the name of this discussion is Ari.
Alright.
Ari, a real discussion.
Right.
Okay.
So
This the book.
right. So as we know, the book was broken up into a few different parts, and part 3 was the goal of integration.
Mhm.
And the very first section of that was hatred and resentment as the price of denied freedom.
Mhm.
And one of the passages said, such a great amount of hatred is generated when people have to give up their freedom, proves how essential a value freedom is for them. Often the person is in actual life who has had to surrender much of his freedom, usually in his childhood. So so it says in actual life who has to surrender much of his freedom, usually in his childhood. And the interesting thing is this book written at the time, I thought was interesting because this book, a lot of the people that he referred to who went to therapy, a lot of them were having issues with their parents. And basically them kind of living the lives that the parents wanted them to, and not necessarily like society, of course, like their society, but strictly like this life plan or a lot of this influence that this their parents had in what way they wanted to live their life, and them struggling through that either with the decisions that they did make in favor of what their parents did, or even the some of the issues they have with their parents from not making those same decisions. And I know all of us as adults and as people, of course, we're going to have that same struggle. I think now, as a lot of us get older, we embrace therapy and self discovery and self development a lot more. Um, we understand the right for people to understand and choose for themselves. But as a parent, I think new age parents might be doing better, but I think from our generation and up, there definitely was a lot of like very heavy influence from your parents of go to this school and you need to go to college and you should get this type of job and you need to stay here and you need to make this kind of money. And if you get that as an adult, you already know as a child you have a problem because all kids are like, I can't wait till I grow up to do exactly what I want. We discussed this in the
Mhm.
last time. And
Mhm.
so you first begin to feel some kind of loss of autonomy as a child, just not being able to drink your juice before eating your food or eating the snack that you wanted to before dinner. But what about the deeper things of like programs that you want to join that your parents, you know, didn't approve of, they wouldn't let you do? What about, maybe some of the friends that you had and your parents didn't particularly like that friend and talk bad about that friend? And in association, how they associated that friend, maybe associated you to that person. And it brings up a lot of things about that. But I was just wondering from hearing that passage, what kind of stuck to you from that?
To me, it makes me think of like a conversation I had with one of my parents where they say, you don't forgive, like you don't forgive the things that happened in the past. And I told them like, it's not that I don't forgive, it's just that you keep re-traumatizing me. So I think what people forget or what we don't realize is like we tend to think that once we grow up that our parents are going to like back off. Like, oh, now I'm grown. I can make my own decisions. I could do what I want. I could show up how I want. I could have these children. I could drive these cars. I could pick, my own friends. But realistically, that's not what happens, right?
Right.
As you grow up, depending on how much your parent has going on, they may be all in your business because you are kind of like what they view as an investment, right? And so they want
Mm.
to check and make sure that their investment is still like growing. And so they checking in, and maybe you should do this, maybe they should do that, because a lot of parents depend on their children as their retirement plan, right? And so you think you have done your job. I'm 18 or 21 or 25 now. I'm out on my own. I could just have a regular relationship with you person to person, but you still have so much influence, from these parents disapproving on, how you show up, who you are, what you do. And so it's not even a matter of like when you were a kid, you didn't get a chance to do what you want. But it's like even when you're an adult, you still have to deal with your parents. And he talks in the book, he says, a child doesn't really know themselves until their parent die, right?
Mm.
Because your parent is always kind of whispering in your ear, always trying to tell you, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. They love you, they want to protect you, and they also want to protect themselves because you are their retirement plan. And so a lot of times it's like, I want, you know, to be able to self-actualize, to be who I am, but I still feel like that child back when I was 10, because I still have the same parent talking to me as if I'm 10,
Mm-hmm.
treating me as if I'm 10, not approving of my decisions, saying negative things to me. And what people don't realize is it doesn't even matter a parent. When you make a choice and somebody criticize your choice, it's like they're criticizing you. So when you go and pick a maid, or you decide to have a kid, or you get this car, or this job, and move this place, or you decide to wear this, and your parent is like, you're wearing that, or that's not appropriate, or why are you going here, or why you choose this mate, it again takes you back to when you were a child, that 10-year-old all over again, and you feel powerless. And so I
Mm.
think that was the whole idea of like man searching for himself, is like going back to that moment where you disconnected as a child and putting some power back into it, because that's the only way you can self-actualize.
Mm. Um, so the interesting thing was this chapter, and particularly about freedom, it uh talked about freedom on many different levels. And so one of the first one was talking about as a person and as a child and a grown up that we were talking about. But one of the next passages was talking about maybe some of the freedom that you lost living in a particular government or society. And so one of the passages said, if a government sets out to take away people's freedom, it must siphon off their hatred and direct it towards outside groups. Otherwise, the people would revolt. And this is interesting to think that, like, it's saying if a government must take away people's freedom, then it needs to move their hatred to somewhere else. Like redirect their energy. And that way it's easy to kind of slide in and take away, some of those privileges or rights, I would even say, that people have. And I think about in very current history, we just had like 4 years, and then before that, there was another 8 years of a lot of like derisiveness and a lot of like clash, in our particular government, but especially the last 4 years, there's a certain like new rhetoric and this new like viciousness that's happened in like the last 4 years in our government. And I think definitely some of the like things that they're addressing and the policies they're trying to move, they do that very easily. One, of course, we know by fear mongering, but in that fear mongering, kind of shifting this like hate or like even I guess like some people might consider it a rebellion or a taking a stand against some of these things that don't necessarily even like make sense to their like cause or whatever, or even necessarily helps to improve anything. They're just still taking this stand off of like maybe imposed morals, stuff like that. For example, right now in the country, there's a lot of debate going on about women's rights, is particularly in women's health and, abortions. And some places want to completely ban them. Some places want to put a very uh, strict limitations on when you can get it and when you can't. And while I think some people morally, they would feel that they have a certain obligation to something. At the same time, in the world, there is a freedom of choice, and there's always a different option, other options. While you can choose to not steal for your living, another person might, but also another person may not have any other choice. And that what comes down to is maybe to some of these women, that there might not be other choices because maybe you can't afford to have children, or maybe you already have too many children. And again, you can't afford, the time or the money that it would have these children. And mind you, all the time that to me, I feel like these issues are being pushed around. They don't want um, abortions to be legal. They don't necessarily want to expand Medicaid, and they don't want to uh, expand like welfare and offer welfare to more people. So I think in that, but before they do that, they kind of push this thing of like, hey, God gave you this beautiful gift, and why would you get rid of it? And that's not the appropriate thing to do, and this, not whatever. And so it's all of this rhetoric that's spewed, but you don't get to like the basis of why that would even be an option. It's only that like you've shifted this conversation to like promiscuous, immoral women, right?
Mhm.
And so now you shifted this like hatred from this group to these promiscuous, immoral people um, who are out living fast and loose and now are pregnant and don't want to deal with the consequences of their actions. And that's not always true. I think of that just one simple example of maybe how like the government would take your hatred and put it somewhere else to slowly take your freedom. There's a lot of other things that are happening right now, but I'm gonna just do that one. That's probably like the easiest one. that
Well, for me, I was writing an article earlier today and it was talking about consumption, and it's saying the biggest problem or the biggest mistake that we made in society is now that we consume others' lives. And absolutely,
mm,
it's kind of exactly what you're saying right now, because this is always a funny conversation to me. I say this all the time. I find it hilarious that men make decisions for women, the rich
mm,
make decisions for poor, for
mm-hmm,
the poor, the heterosexuals make decisions for the homosexuals. It's like all of these people who do not live these experiences are making decisions for others when it's really not your business.
mm-hmm,
And kind of like what you're saying is now the norm is that we're so involved in how other people live their lives at the expense of our own. Like,
mm,
for instance, a lot of the politicians are male, so why are we even having this conversation? Like,
mm,
unless these are female politicians having this debate or this discussion, what does it matter to you if you're not, one, the person who's going to carry the baby, who, two, going to have the hospital bills and the failing body because of it, and three, you're not the primary caretaker of a kid. So of course, as a
mm-hmm,
man, you want to have kids because you're not the sole responsible, but you're not solely responsible for the kid. It's, even if you're
mm-hmm,
married, the responsibilities fall on the woman. So
mm-hmm,
again, it's like, yes, but this is not your conversation to be had. Your conversation of, contraceptive, because again, the big thing about this whole conversation is you're not taking away the contraceptions from men. That's
right.
abortion as well, because if sex is supposed to be two people having sex, and whether whatever happens, creates a baby or not, whatever you do pre to not have a baby is the same thing as if I do something post. If you're not going to ban condoms, if you're not going to ban birth control, then what are we talking about? And the man's biggest choice is whether he lets off his seed or not, because two people can have sex and walk away without somebody being pregnant. So if a woman gets pregnant, it's not because of her, it's because you put your semen in there and inseminated her. You see what I'm saying? Like, and then the conversation now goes back to, we're loose, we're out there doing this and we're doing it. We can have sex at any time and not get pregnant. The only way we can get pregnant is if the man releases his sperm. So who is this conversation really about? We got the men making decisions, but they not taking no accountability for their decisions. They're trying to throw it back on us and then control how we, make decisions as far as our body or what it is we want to do with our life. And I just think that it's so absurd. And I just wish that we would go back to the day where we minded our own business. We don't need to know what everybody is doing. If they're not doing anything to physically hurt someone, it is not your business. It really isn't. And so it's, again, kind of like the passage that you're saying, the technique is to give somebody tools that let them live, that let them look into somebody else's life while avoiding looking into those. Kind of like that movie we was watching, Voyagerism.
What? You mean vivarium?
No, voyeurism. It was about a couple and they moved into a building, and it was apparent that obviously they had the, strengthen their own relationship, but it was two artists that lived across the way from, and their life was just so much more interesting. And so the couple spent their life spying on the artist couple next door, and it was a twist, a wicked twist, which again was to drive home how, instead of like investing in other people's lives, you could have used that time and energy to invest in your life, and it wouldn't have ended in tragedy, which we're seeing a lot of, like fear mongering. We're seeing a lot of tragic things that don't necessarily pertain to our everyday lives, but we consume it, and in consuming it, we take along the fear, the negativity, and all these things that stun us, stun our growth, make us immobile. And so absolutely, it's like, I think, again, the biggest thing you could do is pull yourself from out this world and stop worrying about and focusing on other people, and just focus on how you can serve yourself, how you can serve the world, and how you can, again, search for yourself, because that's where all of the answers, that's where all the treasure lie, is within yourself.
Absolutely. Okay. So another part that I guess like that will go into that is in this section 2 about freedom, is he speaks about how like human beings are willing to destroy things, mostly themselves, in pursuit of freedom. And I feel like on some level that's true, but at the same time, as we go further into the book, we talk about how maybe that's a pseudo freedom,
Absolutely.
So you want the freedom to make the choices about the thing you like, but you don't want the responsibility that real freedom would give you.
Kind of like Muhammad Ali. He said he hated every minute of training, but obviously he loved being the champ. So it's like we all want to be the champ, but nobody wants to train.
That's like something I saw too, was like people who run track. Like most people who run track hate running. Like they hate it. They just like winning. Like that's the only thing that's in it for them. But all the training, the actual race, everything, they hate it. They only like winning. And that's what keeps them in there. So like I would agree with you. I feel like, when it comes to like an adult, I think as an adult some of us and most of us hopefully would have things that brings us pleasure and things like that. And a lot of time that is like one of the like few things in life that kind of keeps like a spark. But in truth, like once you become an adult and you have all this responsibility, you're like, life is trash. Like like adulthood sucks. Like if I could go back now, and I remember like when I was like in my 20s, my dad was like, "Hey, why don't you just come live with me? Like, like I'll build you like an apartment over the garage. We can just be roommates and stuff." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to live with my dad. Like I don't do that." And he's like, "Nah, it'd be cool. Like, he makes the money, pay the bills, no problem." And now I'm like, "You dummy, you idiot." You could have had it all. You could have had the world. And you said no. Like, why would you do that? And like people ask all the time, like, if you could go back, like in your life, like in your childhood, you could go back with everything you know now, like, would you? And I feel like most people are like, yes, absolutely. And like the one thing to me, I feel like the one thing like I would do is like I would go back with my knowledge now, but I would be like the most exceptional child. It would be like so crazy. My dad would be like, my daughter is great. She never breaks any rules. She's so responsible. Like she just listens. She's excellent at studying. Well, I don't know if I still be good at studying, but she does well in school, this and that. I'm sure it'd still be disappointing because I'm still not gonna go to college, but just like some of those things. But I know your thing is always like you wouldn't want to go back with the
See,
knowledge you have now.
and I guess that's just a gift of mine. I realized one of my gifts is that I always kind of enjoy whatever it is that I'm doing. So even as a child, my mom told me the story like one time she let me, go off with a family member, and a family member was shady. Okay. And you
Mm,
know how Baltimore is. So some of the buildings are low, and this is when we still had towers and stuff. Okay. So
mm,
my mom said she came to pick me up one time, and the building was just smelling crazy. It was just dirty. It was looking crazy. She seen needles on the floor everywhere.
mhm,
She said she got up to the floor, and I was just up there laughing, giggling, having me a good old time as if nothing around me was bad or negative. And so for me, I've always been that person. I lived my life so thoroughly, I don't need to go back. I lived
mm.
each year. Okay. I rode it till the wheels fell off. Okay. I don't need to go back.
To me, I feel like I don't have any regrets about my life that like, people like, do you have regrets? And I'm like, no. I'm like, of course, like I could have made better decisions, but I'm not something about that. But it would be interesting to go back to see how things would change if I did it this way. So to me, I guess like it's more of like that what if type of question of like what else could have happened? What else like could have been the outcome or something like that? Or do you still get here anyway? Because they say some things are like was meant for you is meant for you. So do you still get to this same place anyway?
Well, if all of it is happening and none of it is happening, yes.
Mm. Um, Speaking of that, when we're talking about like going back and doing life over and making changes, another part of the book it kind of goes into like self pity, and it talks about how. Well, let me read the passage. It says, self pity is the preserved form of hatred and resentment. One can then nurse his hatred and retain his psychological balance by means of feeling sorry for himself, comforting himself with the thought of what a tough lot has been his, how much he had to suffer, and refrain from doing anything about it. Um, and so going back to what we were just saying of like we both were just kind of saying like I don't, regret life. I kind of could have made better decisions. But overall, like my life is good. Like I'm not, happy. I'm very pleased with the person I am. And I'm sure that I'll be very pleased into the person like I grow into. But we know for a fact that that is not true for everyone. And I think particularly because we're family and the dynamics of our family and how interwoven our family can get when it comes to like self-pity, I think both of us can see like very prime examples like in front of us about that. And so again, this part in self-pity is also in the section about freedom. And so it's kind of like to me, I take it as um some of that freedom that we have, like they said, we're willing to like destroy or die for it. But also, I think there's an issue when they don't talk about some of that freedom that people take for themselves and they allow to be relinquished to something or someone else. And it's not even necessarily like a conscious thing all the time. Um, and so with that, um, not being a decisive, autonomous person will come self pity. And it's kind of speaking that like self-pity really is just a cop out
Yes.
because you allow yourself to be resentful, you allow yourself to be angry about your position or wherever you are. And self-pity allows you to do all that without having to actually do anything to pull yourself out of that situation. But psychologically, in your mind, it makes sense. And so it doesn't cause any disturbance within yourself to live in this space.
Yeah. Kind of just like, again, by watching others, you really not watching yourself. So what you said, what I heard was a comparison when you're
Mm-hmm.
saying like, oh, in the world, people like me or things like this happen and it's not my
Mm-hmm.
fault. And look what happened over there. You can't make those statements unless you're comparing it to something. Like on
Mm.
your own, if you just take it, isolate yourself, you can't make that comparison. You need another person or another circumstance or another experience to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem here is not only self-pity, it's also entitlement, because you're comparing your life to somebody else and you're saying they have it, so I should be able to have it, and because I don't have it, I feel pitiful.
Mm. Do you also think, besides entitlement, I feel like another common issue is people having this thought about a lack of abundance. So if they have it, I obviously cannot have it because they already took it. And so woe is me because now I can't get there because you're there.
Well, what I notice is that that's also a side effect of being poor. Let's be honest, because those who have abundance, they don't think like that. It's only
Yeah.
people who have grown up in families who have taught them lack or poverty, that they think like that. It's not until you are born into a family who can afford to send you to Disney World on a school trip like everybody else in your class. You
Mm.
see what I'm saying? It's not
Mm.
until you have these instances that you go, oh, like, oh, okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes sense. I was also thinking about bee just flew past me.
I saw.
Sorry. The whole top. In that thing too about self-pitying is we have a family member, and this family member, I think about um there's a strain um between that family member and both of us, right? And I think because of exactly what you're saying, it was like that self-pitying. And so uh us at the time as young women, because this family member is older, we kind of came to the thought of, oh, it's just a matter of circumstance. So even both of us being a lot younger took initiative to say, hey, here's a different circumstance. You in particular, you opened your home to this person for a very long time, and that was supposed to be the catalyst to this new thing. That was supposed to be, new opportunities to do this and that, or whatever. And in that entire time, that person didn't do any of the things that they wanted to do. And to me, it made me think of, because so long you were in this environment and you could be self-pitying and say, man, I had this hard time and I got to do this and I got to do that because I'm in this situation. It was easy to not take any real responsibility for yourself. And then as soon as you got into a space where you could take responsibility and all the things you complained about, you could make a change for, you did it. There was nothing changed
Mhm,
at all.
mhm,
And then you went back to the situation you were in
mhm,
before. And
mhm,
now we hear the same conversation again. And
mhm,
so again, it makes me think about, it's easy for self pity because in your mind, it allows you to complain about your circumstances, and it makes sense to you, right? And in a sense, it would make sense to everyone else because the circumstances don't fit. But really, like I said, when you're given an opportunity to change something, you don't take that initiative.
Right. I mean, because a lot of us have, again, it seems like everything goes back to childhood. A lot of us,
Mm,
have been taught, so your conscious is just the voice of your parents or the voice of the adults that's around you. So like,
mhm,
again, the things that people say to you when you're a child, you internalize and you integrate into your personality and your character, and it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And
mhm,
so if you hear things your whole life like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. I tell you the story all the time about sitting on a nail and not wanting to get off the nail. Well, getting up and coming back every day and sitting on the same nail, or like banging your head against the same wall over and over again. At
mm,
the end of the day, it's like, self-pity is a way to avoid invoking feelings, internal feelings that would make you get off the nail. So for instance,
mm,
if something, circumstances or experiences are happening to you and you have to respond, right? if
mm,
so self-pity is the response that makes you um tuck down or put away your feelings um that would push you to move or do something about it. You see
mm,
what I'm saying? It's like a
yeah,
powerless move. It's like, oh, okay, because I'm fearful of what's on the other side. I'm not so what we don't realize is we're more fearful that things will work than that they won't work, right? So they
mm,
say our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, is that we're powerful beyond measure. So
mm,
we're not scared of failing. We already know failing. We've been doing failing all the time. We've been sitting on this
mm,
nail already. We already know what failing is like. What we don't know what is like is success. We don't know what's on the other side of failing. So I've
mm,
gotten accustomed to this. This is comfortable for me. And without the pity, then my feelings would make me do something more, which will make me lose what I know and what I'm comfortable with. And so I choose to quell my feelings through telling myself that the power is not in my hand.
mm. That makes me think, when you were saying that too, is like the fear is not failure, it's success. What makes me think more is I don't think the fear of success, now that I like older and I think about it, I think the fear is the work.
Yes, because
I
success
think
is going to
people
require more from you. Yes.
absolutely, but I
Hmm.
think it's the fear of the work. I think it's the fear of like the hustle and grind that you have to do and how long it would take that because I think everybody wants to be successful, but everybody of course wants that overnight. And I was talking about remember we were talking about this earlier. I was telling you about there was a story in the book when there was a ship that crashed or whatever, and there was an old man and a young man, and they both were holding on to a buoy, waiting hopefully for, the SOS they put out for the Coast Guard or whomever to come and show up. And they had been holding on in this water for quite a while. And the young man finally looks at the old man and he goes, I'm sorry, Pops. And he just lets go and he drowns. And so they would say, why would he do that? And the truth is that the fear of dying was easier to accept than the unknowing of how long he would have to hold on before he would be saved. And that unknowing just was too much for him. And so he let go. And so I think of that same thing, like you were saying in life and success. I think everyone can view what success would look like, but not many people have an idea what the path is or what the journey is and what that's supposed to look like. And they're very fearful of like the work they would have to do, how many times you have to fail until you succeed, how long it takes before you get to that place. Um, and everyone's afraid, of failure, but I feel like people are especially afraid of failure when you've done your best. It's fine to fail when you've kind of lazily done nothing. It's to be expected, right? But when you really worked hard, when you've really given your all, when you really put your passion and your love and whatever good things you have into something and it still doesn't work, then I think that's also the fear that people have too, is the unknown, not of just success, but also the unknown of possible failure. And
Well,
it's a whole different kind of failure. Mhm.
that's a comparison too.
Yeah,
So the problem is that we're always comparing. We don't even realize we're comparing and we're comparing. So it's like when
I
you
guess
say,
so. Yeah.
I put all of this effort in and it didn't work out. Well, okay, so when you say that, what you're saying is that somebody else created the standard and you didn't make their standard, which is a comparison.
Mm. Mm.
To not compare means that you have to focus on just your effort and you have to celebrate the effort. The result doesn't
True.
matter. So it's like,
True.
I put all this hard work in and my character is strengthened because of the hard work, not because of the result. The result is man-made and it's a comparison.
I agree with that. I agree with that. When I had my business for a while and I was, doing my business and I had like all this stuff, and people be like, don't do that. Like, why would you do that? Stop making that type of thing. It's too much time, whatever, because they were seeing like how much time I was spending on that or how stressed I might be trying to, do this certain thing for my business or whatever. And because my business was new, they were like, hey, like, are you making a lot of money and stuff? And I'm like, no, not yet. Like, best times I break even, a couple of times I might have 10 more dollars, but it was a new business. As things went on, I bought, more things for my business and things like that. So I didn't necessarily have like this great profit or whatever. But, a lot of times people were like, well, oh, like just give that up and they don't want to do that. And to me, I'm just like, it's fine. Like to me, like I enjoyed the effort. I enjoyed making the business. Even the things that were stressful, like I enjoyed that. And so I didn't have a problem that my business wasn't like blowing up and making me tons of money and people were ready to put me on a franchise. That wasn't it. I was enjoying like making my business and the efforts it did. And the truth of the matter is like I don't have that business anymore, but for me, I have that like experience of that like, oh yeah, I had a business. Like I had a lot of like clients, I had a lot of work, that I had to do and I created this thing that was really really good for a while. And so even though I'm not, Oprah Winfrey, you
Says
know, I'm still happy with that. And it's true. I think like most people in comparison, if they can't, you know, what they say, get themselves out the hood, retire their mama, retire themselves, then they have not like truly succeeded. And it's just like, why not? I'm like, I didn't make a whole bunch of money, but to me, I succeeded in my business. The fact that I had more than one person, seek out my business that like wasn't the fact that I had people I've never met before that wasn't family that seeked out my business, I think is exceptional. Because, most of the time, like when you start something, it's like kind of your family, like, oh, I support you and I do this now, whatever. The fact that I had pretty much no friends, no family who uh supported my business, to me, I think that's like an amazing effort in itself.
Yeah, and we always talk about how people do things and then they expect like right away they're supposed to get some sort of like outcome or the result that they want. And it reminds me
Mhm.
of this story of this person was saying that I think it was a printer that was having a hard problem or that wasn't working or something. And they called this guy who was experienced and said, come fix it. So he came in and he just took something and hit it one time and it started working and he charged them like $10,000. And they was like, you was here less than 5 minutes. Like, how are you charging us $10,000? And he said, it took me 30 something years to be able to do that in 5 minutes. And
Mhm.
so that's what people are not understanding. Like they want quick results because everything is a comparison. They go, oh, I've been doing this, for 1 year and I haven't made enough money or I haven't made money compared to who? Because if
Right.
there wasn't a standard, it may take this person 10 years, it may take this person 1 year. It does not matter. Anything else is a comparison. And that's what we tend to do when we're not searching for ourselves. We're comparing our experiences to someone else, which causes the misery and the loneliness and the unhappiness
Mhm.
and kind of all the things that he talked about in the book.
I think also too it goes back to what you're saying, consumption and consumption of people's lives, because there's this really like trendy song, like on TikTok where people show like things they're made and how much time it took them and how much money it cost. And the song says it cost this much because it took me effing hours, you know?
Mhm.
So if you don't want to pay for it, that's fine. You go make it, and you're free to find someone else. But as for me, it took me hours and hours of my time to make this. And so that's why it's priced at the price point it is. And um, when you own a business, you definitely 100% get that. And when you say about people like consume like people's lives, like I feel like that too. Is when you have a product because they're like, oh, what is this? Like I could get this for cheaper over there or something. I'm like, you're free to go over there. I feel like if they were already making that thing that you wanted, then you would have went there already and paid that, cheap price. Um, but they're not, and now you're trying to haggle me into this space, so you can afford something that takes me 5 minutes, like 5-10 minutes to make one, and you want me to make 12, you
Right.
know? And then you're like, okay, so 12 of them, $12, right? And you're like, no, I'm not gonna take 10 minutes on that's 120 minutes. And you wanna pay me $12? No.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
I agree that. And again, I just saying it comes back to like the whole consumption thing that you were saying too. Like maybe we don't even realize in that matter of how we consume people there too. Especially when you live like in a society where we live now when things are just there. You walk into the store all the time and it's just there, you
True.
know. Um Another another thing I think about too is like just kind of segue into the next thing of like we're talking about, you know, the big thing is about freedom and however that looks. And when we think of like an image of freedom, right?
Mhm.
We usually think of like a war or a revolution. And so then when you think of a war of a revolution, then that automatically makes you think of the rebels. And so, well, to me, I'm just saying
I
most
think
of the
of
time we think of,
I think of meditation. I think of a person sitting down and they like, that's what I think of when
well,
I
I'm
think of
thinking of
freedom.
that's personal, yeah, but I'm talking about like the propaganda. And we live in America,
I
so the
would think I would
propaganda.
think chains before war.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I was thinking about like the propaganda America has, and it's like it usually would be like our military. We have a large military. We fight every day for your freedom. The American government fights for your freedom all the time. So it's always like this connotation put together with fighting. And so I'm saying when you're fighting, you have your side, and then there's always also like the opposite side or the rebels. And so in that thing too, you also think about and freedom, going back to what you're saying, like meditation and personal freedom, there's the rebellions that you may take too in your life for your own personal freedom, right? But the interesting thing is that the book talks about that like rebellion is not freedom. How would you explain that? Like,
So we know I was a rebel without a cause for a long time, and I just for me and it hasn't changed, but for me I reject anybody who doesn't have the character I want
mhm,
or isn't where I would like to be, um like quality wise in life.
mm,
And so for me it was in life, what I noticed is that the people who are the most vocal are those people. And
mm,
so it's like they are the people who's quick. They're the people who are quick to tell you what to do, what you should say, how you should think, what you should wear. They want to be the first to punish you when you break their perceived rules, and it makes you angry. So then you just start to like reject authority, because again, we talk about this consumption of other people's lives. Really, the decisions that I make for my life has nothing to do with you, and for you to take time out of your life to try to punish me like angered me, which made me rebel against authority, right? Where now, I think the difference is, back then it was just like, if you are in an authoritative position and you try to make me do something that I didn't agree with, I'm going to 100. Hands down, you know what I'm saying? Now, I'm still a rebel, but I'm a rebel with the cause. So I know what I value. So even when authority comes to challenge me and want to punish me and I want to go to 100, I always match it or align it with my values, which keep me in line. So that's the difference. Like, so a rebellious person is a person who is just going, they're acting on their feelings against society, but they have no vision, they have no value, they have no purpose. They're just, I just want to do the opposite of. And anything that you are showing, what is it? Anything that you resist persists. So when you are a rebel, the things that you are resisting will persist. When you are a rebel with a cause, the things around you don't matter unless they align with your values. So a lot of times you won't even engage in things that can be detrimental or don't align with your values, because it's the lens in which you see the world.
That's great. That's actually like really in line with like what the book said, which is interesting. But it said, since the rebel gets his sense of direction and vitality from attacking the existing standards and mores, he does not have to develop standards of his own. Rebellion acts as a substitute for the more difficult process of struggling through to one's autonomy, to new beliefs, to the state where one can lay new foundations on which to build. The negative forms of freedom confuse freedom with license and overlook the fact that freedom is never the opposite to responsibility. And that's, exactly what you said, pretty much. Like, absolutely. The interesting thing is that, like, to me, I never felt like I've ever been a rebel in my life. I felt like I've not done what people wanted me to do, but I didn't feel like a rebel or rebellious. I just felt like this was more in line to how I would be more comfortable, to do things. And so I just did it that way. And so to me, it's interesting to like, for me personally, I don't know what rebellion is, even though I may live so differently and think so differently, especially I think of like my ilk and like my family. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think at the same time, I've been afforded the space to grow in whatever way I wanted to. Yeah, go ahead.
I just had an aha moment. You just gave me an aha moment. I think the difference is you are contained. So a contained person is not seen as rebellious. Think about like what we know. A person can show up looking suave, they could be real stoic, and no one will ever think anything insidious about that person. That person could be going to go plant a bomb to blow up the building, right? So you're a very contained person. I'm a wild person. What do people like to do to wild people?
Take them down.
Domesticate them. Yep. And so the difference is our temperaments. I have a wild temperament and you have a contained temperament. So you really never felt the need for rebellion, because people are going to let you go and do whatever you want to do anyway, because they don't see you as a threat. They don't see you as something that needs to be changed to something else. It's just like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
look at her. And then that's just it. But when you
Mm-hmm.
see a wild person, it reminds you how domesticated you are. And then a lot of people don't like that. And they go, she not a lady. She not this, she not that. I need to teach her a lesson. I need to get her back in the box. I need to do whatever to shrink her down, to take her down, and I think that's the difference is like your what I say
Temperament.
temperament. Yes.
Yeah. And that makes me think about like when something happens, like if they had a choice between the two, it's like if you want someone to go in there nice and sweet, but who is persistent, that will just wear you down and be like, fine, whatever. That's me. But if you want the person to go in and be like, yeah, my blah, 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 it really like put everyone like on tense and they're just like, this is too much, like I'm just trying to get her out of here to get it settled, then they send you. And that's the difference. Because we talk about this all the time, like versus the nasty versus the nice nasty. So there's been situation both of us, I would say, where we're very close, and so someone may say something to you that I didn't like, and I'll say something back, and it's not yelling, it's not something, but there definitely was a response to it, and then there's something someone said to me that you didn't like, and it was like, "Ba-da-da-da-da." And I'd be like, yeah. And even at some point, I'd be like, oh, back off, Ebony. Oh, carry my feelings too.
Yeah, true. And I think the difference is this. I give a person way more shots before I get to that level as opposed to you, like the moment somebody says something, you're gonna be like and on it.
Yeah,
So for
true.
me, I'll go on and on and on, and I'll ignore you, and I'll be like, whatever, it's not that serious, but it go on too long. You finna catch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you the rope to hang yourself. Yes, I am.
I will say that. I feel like that is like my main problem. My mouth is quick. It just comes quick. And then I feel like all the time I come in, I'm like, I tell you all the time, I say, Ebony, I just need to learn to shut up. If I just learn to shut up, I would be fine. Like, I wouldn't have people looking at me like, excuse me. And I'm just like, I'd be like, look, to me, I don't realize it's nice and nasty. I just like maybe pointed out something, asked a question, but apparently I pointed out the wrong thing, asked a really rude question. So, I don't know.
And I'm not asking no questions or pointing out anything unless it pertains to me. I learned many times over, 1,000, a million times over. Okay, mind your business. Explicitly mind your business. So I don't ask questions. If you ain't telling me, I don't want to know. Like, because again, it's just like, no. At the end of the day, I really do want to practice like not consuming people, and
Right.
so I kind of just mind my business unless it pertains to me, unless it's going to affect my overall quality of living. I let it go. I let so much, especially with my thinking, I let 80 to 90% of things go. I just don't even invest. It's not worth it. You have to keep going on and on and on for me to want to bite back. But I think again in our culture, because we have such a quick response culture, that the more you intake of culture, the more you have no choice but to have to fire back like that. You see what I'm saying? Like when you in culture and everybody else is minding everybody's business and consuming everyone, you always have to be on standby. We have a family member that talk about she be in the shower preparing her with her comebacks, like just in case somebody try her, she already know which comeback for which. You see what I'm saying? So we kind of live in a society like that where it's just like you have to be, in order to protect yourself, you have to be able to just like fire back. But my response to that is just to ignore people. Like I stop firing back because ultimately what I want is peace and joy. And I don't think you matter in the grand scheme of things. So I'll let you have that. If you need it, you can have it. You go have that. If you need it, you welcome. My gift to you, Go ahead.
You know what? That also makes me think of like to me, I would always say, like, I feel like I don't know like a better analogy, but I would say two sides of the same coin, right?
Mhm.
Because I feel like um in general, well, I think put it this way better. I think there's like, we've grown up a lot together. And so there's things that we've grown to understand like together. We don't necessarily always agree on like a certain perspective of it, but we're willing to like talk, listen, understand, learn something new. And then it's like it's okay. Or then like just agree to disagree and be like, oh, okay. So like you can have that conversation or whatever. Because you don't agree with me, I don't feel personally attacked or criticized or rejected because you don't, say something to me or something like that. And so when I think of that, who moved my cheese? What was the two? It's the sniff and the
Sniff.
what?
Sniff.
And
I just read this.
I know that's what I'm saying. Like we talk about this
Hem,
all the
haw,
time, but now I'm
sniff, and scare.
scary. Okay. So
Is
you're the
that right?
sniff.
Hold on. Sniff, scary. Yes, that's right. I think so.
Okay. So you're the sniff
Hmm.
and I'm the scary, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you see the problem when it's walk getting up and you're like, all right, I'm out. And I'm the one who saw you running and I'm running behind you like, why are we running? Yeah. So I feel like a lot of times we be in the same boat, but which is like, like very different, but it's in the same boat. And so I feel like at the same time of like particularly like how like the dynamics work and stuff, I feel like what you're saying is like you let like a lot of things go and you're thinking about stuff. And because like you're thinking and you're processing, you're like, all right, like what is the point? What would it do? Blah, blah, blah. And so until this comes, something up, then you're like, whatever. Whereas to me, I get in trouble because I'm so quick because my mind's not thinking like that. So it's immediately it comes to me and I'm like, but what about this? And they be like, huh? And I'm like, what? To me, I'm like the blonde. I'm like, what? What did I say? Like, I don't understand. Like, was I wrong? Did I lie about something? And you be like, Paris, you didn't lie, but why did you say that? And I'm like, I thought, all of us knew it. So, it was just like right there. So I just want to be like, look, all of us know this and you're talking about this. Are you talking about this? Like, let's just put it out there. So I think I think that's like also the difference in like containment. But I think like the interesting thing is because again, like you were saying, like in the beginning, it really was like me. I always minded my business. I did not know what's going on. I went exactly with the flow, and I know what positions or maybe issues that gave me and I moved into this place here. And you were the opposite of like in everything, you wanted to know everything and the issues that gave you. And so it moved yourself here. And so in that from being little, we moved in opposite directions again, still together, but in opposite directions. When I'd be like, Ebony, say it, do it. And you'd be like, no. Like, no, I don't know what's gonna happen. And I'm like, so what can happen? Like, they're gonna be mad. It's fine, Ebony. You're like, no, I'm not gonna
Mm,
do it. And I'll be like,
no.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And you be like, well, you do it then. I feel like it was the opposite when we were little.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's true too of just like how like that growing and things like that moves you in a different phase. But I think again, the main thing that both of us understand, even in that of like, joking about these situations, is that when you get older and like you're saying, you take time to make that like self development and you take time, like you're saying, to invest in yourself and to find your freedom in what you're saying of like your meditation, the things that make you happy, the things that you don't mind putting effort into. It doesn't give you that bad stress or, things, and you're moving in purpose. you know. And I say all the time, like, no, everybody's not here to cure cancer, but everyone has to move in purpose. Your purpose doesn't have to be to cure cancer. It could be something a lot simpler, but you still have to move in your purpose, whatever that is. And when you do that, like you were saying before, I think you learn to, like, one, truly invest in yourself and to put away all the other stuff. And so then you learn to mind your business. And I think, you know, that's the problem we have. People develop themselves in the culture in the world. And so that puts them in a space to constantly consume everything else that people are doing and have an opinion and a place for it. Whereas to me and you, we're usually late to everything. Like, don't know about it, haven't heard it, this and that, whatever. Right now, we're reading a book that was written in the 1800s. Like, we just late.
It's called a
But
temperature check. We know we ain't of this temperature. That's it.
that point. And so it's just like, you live in the realm of mind your business. Like, I mind my, you know, my family and the people I love, but at the same time, I don't overstep my place. You know, I'm of the mind now that people are like, hey, I want to do this. I'm like, do it, try it, go for it. Why not? You know, if I have some real reservations of it, I say, hey, you know, maybe this is not the right time. I can tell you what I think could be the problem, but it's not my job to discourage you out of something if it's not dangerous or harmful to your person. That's not my place. You don't have to do what I think is the right thing to do. And if you don't have big responsibilities and obligations in this world, why not do it? Who knows what you will become? So um, that's the same thing too, of like finding your own personal freedom and understanding what freedom truly is. And until I feel like you understand what free truly is, then you can only move into rebellion.
Right, because freedom is synonymous with responsibility. In order for you to be free, you have to take responsibility of yourself. And
Absolutely.
again, it talks about the two needs that we need, the need to be taken care of and the need to be responsible. But a lot of us, you know, take out the need to be responsible outwardly, and that includes our kids. So we go, okay, I'll be responsible for kids, and we will neglect our own self-development or personal growth or mastery to be responsible for the kid. But ultimately, your responsibility is yourself, investing in yourself. And in the book, he talked a lot about it being a solo journey and people needing to reconcile that, because we use people a lot to kind of, you know, hide from the fact that this is a solo journey and that you're only going to get out what you put in. So if you keep investing in other people, the reason why you feel so miserable is because they're not giving you back what you're investing in them. So what if you just take, you know, turn the tables and invested in yourself? Then you have the responsibility to give yourself back what you invested in yourself. And it doesn't necessarily feel like a chore. It's something that you want to do because you see yourself growing. You see the way, you know, your mindset changes, how you showing up in this world. Every time something major happens and I don't know what's going on, I pat myself on the back. Just like everybody else, I was, you know, on Facebook when it first started. I spent a lot of my time consuming other people. But I realized if you're going to consume other people, make sure that they are giving you real food that will help you to, you know, that you can consume and metabolize into energy that can propel you to where you want to go. If that is not what it's doing, then you should just kind of just back away from it. And it's okay to go, oh, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'll stay at home and, you know, focus on personal development. And again, it's so taboo if you say to somebody, I don't have an opinion. They like, what do you mean? Like, I don't have an opinion. They're like, but you can just make an opinion. It's like, Not really. Like there's several, for me, the place in my life, there's so many things that go along with that. First of all, I have to care. To even have an opinion,
That's what I'm about to say.
I
I
have to
mostly get in
care.
trouble because people like, what? And I be like, I don't care. They were like, what do you think about this? I'm like, I don't care.
Right. And then secondly, I have to have enough information to know about it. And the third thing, the most important thing is if I don't have any personal experience with it, what we talking about? So I have an
Yeah.
opinion on something that I did not experience personally, that I read about, and now I think I'm an expert. Eh. So it's like you tell somebody, I don't have an opinion about that, and they looking at you weird. And it's like, no, you should probably not have an opinion about anything that doesn't pertain to the quality of your life. It's an
Right.
opportunity cost.
That's that's like depending on when this come out, this will be, well, it's already in the sphere of the culture, but it's kind of new to us when we're recording this. But when that whole thing happened at the Oscars with Will Smith and Chris Rock, and remember that night, I saw it and I sent it in a group chat. And then I was talking to you again that morning, and we were talking about something else, and you were like, "Oh, this happened," and I went, "Oh yeah, I sent that last night, and I forgot. I meant to call you to tell you not to watch it because in the little bit of time that I had watched that, and whatever other media had came through in that little bit of time that I consumed that, it had settled in me as a person that I was uncomfortable with. Because to me, it's just those type of things that a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions about and stuff like that. And to me, personally, some of those things I just experience. That's it. It's like what you're saying. I don't have an opinion this way. I don't have an opinion that way. If it's something bad that happened, most of the time, I'm just like, I wish it never happened. I wish
Mhm.
this never had to happen. But I'm in a space to be like, hey, I experienced that, but I don't have an opinion on it. And if it's something like that that I experienced and it unsettles me a little bit, that's why I was calling to be like, oh, I meant to tell you not to watch it.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't do anything for you.
Mhm.
Like I sent it just to be like, what happened? This is crazy. And it sat with me for a second that I still thought about it after I sent it to you. And I'm like, why am I still thinking about this? It's too settled in my person and I wouldn't want to do that to someone else.
No, 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 no. Absolutely. I'm still thinking about it now. And it's been like a month. But listen, I'm a people, I study people and their actions and more like in particular their mind that is the catalyst behind their action, right? So for
Mhm.
me, even though we're still thinking about it, this is still blowing our brains. But and when you sent it to me, don't forget I was reading a book called what is called Upper Limit. Hold on. It's called uh The Big Leap.
Mm.
And the Big Leap talks about a upper limit problem when it talks about you not feeling worthy or lovable or that you deserve the things that's happening to you, so you tend to do things to self-sabotage. Now we
Mm.
know that he's been waiting on this for a long, 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 long time, and to destroy your
Mm.
moment after you've been waiting on it for such a long time was a beautiful example for me as a social scientist. It was a beautiful example of the upper limit problem
Mhm.
because
True.
obviously, there's some unworthiness in there mixed with, maybe I'm unlikable, maybe I don't deserve to have it, that would make you self-sabotage on such a grand stage. You see what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
you had to not just mess up a little bit. You had to, and it's kind of like what we was talking about earlier, that people are not afraid of failing. Think about it. Will Smith failed how many years not getting them? It's the moment that he's
Mhm.
winning. It's when he show up and smack somebody. So the
Yeah.
upper limit problem is a real thing. Human beings are afraid of winning, not losing.
Mm.
We know losing. it was like, I don't know what life is going to be like on the other side of having this win. Do I
Mhm.
know? Do I want it? Will this drive a bigger wedge between my family, my friends, the people who love me? Like, what will life be like on the other side of that? I know what life is like here. Technically, I got everything I need. I don't need anything more, right? So
Yeah.
going over on the other side is a want, but is that want going to come at a price, right? And so then we or people tend to self-sabotage. And that was just a beautiful example of, self-sabotage, because at the end of the day, it's like you don't want the bad that you've done or what you're not proud of to overshadow what you're proud of. This was a
Mhm.
night for you to be proud of the effort you put in, but then you let it
Mhm.
be overshadowed. And it is that I loved it. I was glad you sent it to me because again, I learned through these social situations. But it is
Mm.
something that we think about because again, obviously Will always talks about, even in his book, he is a man searching for himself. And being in Hollywood is just a whole nother pressure because you just can't allow the focus on your efforts alone. That movie
Right.
still has to sell, or people won't hire you anymore. So that's a whole
Mhm.
nother level, a whole nother devil. Isn't that what Will Denzel told him? New level, new devil. Yes, indeed.
And yeah, pretty much. Like
Mhm.
pretty much. Yeah. And like I guess so. I think just in like the end, like I said, it was just a situation for me personally. Like I see how you got that, but for me it was a situation that I experienced and I'm tired of experiencing it, you know, because there's so much all the time that's coming out about like, oh, and this and it's on the news and blah 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 blah. And like I get that, it was sensational, it's news and this and that, whatever, you hear it everywhere. And I'm like I said, that night I was ready to remove myself from it because it just was like something that was to me a lot. And it's just something that I experienced. I'm just like, I don't really want to be part of that, but it's just in the world now. And so like it happens to, happen everywhere. And it's just like, to me, while it's something like so simple, it doesn't necessarily like involve me exactly. Now I feel like people have made it a part of my life and I don't like that.
Yes, and that's what sensationalism do. That's what consumerism do, and that's pretty
Mhm.
much what TV, radio, and social media is all about: putting you in the viewer's seat of someone else's life that you would not be privy to their information otherwise, and it becomes an obsession. We
Mhm.
will do it all day at the expense of growing and developing and being there for our family. I see, this is my, I like to go to the kids' places, but what I hate about going to like the trampoline parks or the skating parks or, anything like that is the children over there and the adults sitting on the side playing on their phone. And it's like, like this is an opportunity for you to play with your kid because you probably don't play with your kid. And if you can't play the way they're playing, you can engage with them. Like if they're doing something fun and it's bringing them happiness, you
Mhm.
partaking in their fun will bring y'all closer. But instead, you on the phone looking at people who don't even know you exist, and they get a
Mhm.
large amount of your time at the expense of the people around you who you can invest that time in, and you'll see the benefits in the future. And then most importantly, we all want these close relationships, and the only way to get them is to invest in them. And people don't invest in themselves, let alone the relationships that's around them, because of the distractions, because we're more fascinated with
Mhm.
consuming people's lives that were kind of concocted into like, oh, this is the standard and you should want to be like this, or you should want your life to
Mhm.
be like this.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah. I I I I see that a lot. Me personally, I'm gonna take the credit. If I get a chance to sit down and on my phone, Imma do it, but truthfully, I can't do that because I need to know where my children are. So, I can't sit down on my phone. Most of the time what happens is, like, I'm on the phone while they're playing. because if I'm looking at my screen, I can't see where they are. And it's too easy for something to happen and just that quick. I've been not on my phone watching a roar like a hawk and talking to another mom that was at the park and saying, we were playing in a little mall playing thing and it's a bunch of kids running around. And I knew she was over in that area and it's something. And I was talking to the mom, like, yeah. Which say maximum 30 seconds, which is forever, you know, if you run on a treadmill, 30 seconds could kill you, you know? So with the kid or whatever. So I was talking to her and I went and I looked for Aurora and I'm like, where's Aurora? And I get up and I walk around this very small play area and I'm looking in the tunnels and I don't see Aurora. And I'm like, huh? I walk out right in front of where the kids are. There was a kiosk with toys and Aurora was over there playing with the car on the floor. That small second, she had walked out of the gate to the kiosk and played with something. And I had been there for hours, watching her for hours, walking, keeping her from beating other children for their toys, helping her slide down the little slide. And I had just sat to talk with the mom whose child happened to be playing with the roar at the same time. And I said, oh, something, and talk to her, you know, just to be engaging, to look at her or something, and look back in the world was gone, you know? So, like, absolutely. But that also makes you think of like how much you can be consumed in this thing and you're not in the world. You know, you're not in the world. And like how much have you tied yourself to social media and these devices? You know.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And like we said with the whole Will Smith thing, it's truthfully like some of that stuff you consume, it's just like warping your perception of reality. And you don't even realize it. And this is like really quick and then, you know, we can finish. I was talking to um, my husband and I was telling him about the family member that you have who's getting married, and they're having a destination wedding.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you asked if I wanted to go. Yeah. I was like, I've never been anywhere. I haven't had the chance to be out the US yet. You know, I would get to go to this great place. It's supposed to be this thing they're doing, and you know, they want to have a party on the yacht and do this stuff and whatever. And I'm like, that's not my scene. I'm like, I know you, I've heard of them. I don't know these people. That's just not my scene. And I'm like, do I want to pay all this money to be in this scene where people feel like it is theirs and it's not mine? I just feel like no. And I feel like also like it's not your scene. So I'm like, am I gonna pay that much money just to keep you company in a place that we both know it's just like, ugh, you know? Because I'm like, I don't even have nice enough clothes to be on the yacht. Like,
Right. I gotta go get my yacht clothes from Walmart. Hey. Walmart.
yeah,
Hey.
you know, I'm like, am I going to show up in my favorite granny sweater that I bleached, you know, and some jeans and be like, let's go. I said, also, too, I'm like, I don't know what time they're going. I said, I've been on plenty of boats. I don't know if people have it. Boats are cold. I don't like being cold. So that's another reason I don't want to go on the yacht. I don't know these people. I don't know if they're gonna, how they behave themselves. If these people gonna turn up and get wild, and I'm just like, now I'm stuck in the water
First off,
with these people wilding.
now it's not that yacht
Hmm?
parties are not my thing. Let's now, mind you, I'm not a person that would do something like that often, but I would have a once in a lifetime experience. I just think what's going to happen on the yacht is different. Like they're more image people, which means that they don't let loose and they don't have fun because they want to look a certain way. If I'm having me a yacht party, we're having a good time. It's I don't it's not like you need to dress up. I don't expect no wigs. I mean, you could wear your wig, but I don't expect that. I don't expect no lashes. I don't expect heels. Like, I want you to come. We're going to dance. We're going to play. We're going to eat. We're going to have a good time. You know what I'm saying? It's just their type of entertainment is not fun for me. Like, now, mind you, if it's wild, you know I'm having me a good time. I don't care what they do. I will have me a good time. But if it's everybody's all like, like, that is gonna get on my nerves. I can't go anywhere, and you know, my anger do come out. I already have, motion sickness. So you got me out on this boat, and I got motion sickness, and y'all boring as hell. I'm gonna start dropping phones. We gonna have fun. So I don't know. Funny. I don't know.
I feel like that's a definition. I feel like there's different definitions of wild. And so to me, I feel like the wild we're talking about, like, oh, it's fun, it's free, we're dancing, we're talking, we're mingling, we're having a good time, this and that, whatever. And I feel like there's wild where like people are like, oh, I'm here and I want to take pictures and I want to look good and this and that, whatever. And we on the yacht and I want to drink the champagne and I want to do this. And now they're sloppy and they're drunk and they're messy. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just like, why? Like, why? And not to say that I know these people and that's what it is, but I just is like, to me, I feel like the only time I want to go on the yacht is to go to Issa Rae's yacht party.
Oh, we in there. We in there. We in there. We in there. We claiming it. We in there. Wait, do she do that every year?
All right, we in there.
Wait, do she do that every year?
She did until she was doing it every year. It kept getting bigger and bigger. And then like COVID happened and stuff.
Oh, I didn't know. We in there before we out here. Before we out here, we in there. Okay.
Yeah. I'm waiting for it to get big enough, I guess, it to turn into like the Diddy white party. And then we in there.
That sound bougie.
You don't remember Diddy white party?
Bougie and boring. I don't like the combination of bougie and boring. No, thank you.
What I seen, it was not boring. And it was kind of hood. It was a bunch of black people wearing all white in a club scene. That's it.
First off, I don't even own white. I gotta go out and buy it.
I got white, but I'm just being like, how y'all gonna feel when I show up in like my white like abaya? I'm like, that's not what we say. And I'm like, what? I'm here.
Like, she listening to music, is alcohol in here, is twerking going on. Why she here?
Yeah.
So is there anything else in the book you want to talk about? I can stop the video now if not.
I think we'll pause it on this section. We pretty much only went over like the section about freedom. There's more about what freedom is not, but we kind of got into that. And let me see. I think
because we can do that tomorrow. We could do another 2 videos. I'll nailed it challenge, and we can finish this video tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I think the very last one, it was a section about choosing yourself and the courage to be yourself.
I like that. So our next video is about choosing yourself and the courage to be yourself. And we will see y'all soon. This was Ari, a real discussion.
You don't even say it right either.
Ari.
No, I don't think so.
That's how you say it, Ari.
I feel like it sounds different when other Baltimore people say it.
Excuse me? Excuse me? Excuse me?
Look, you didn't let go of your Baltimore accent. You used to say Doug and Frog, and now y'all like dog and frog. So
I mean, I'm gonna have to press pause, drop the mic on you.